The Primarch was dead. Draskov knelt alone at the center of the Long Knife's darkened trophy hall, unhelmed and stripped of his gauntlets and vambraces. The pallid skin of his exposed forearms freshly marked with crisscrossing lacerations. With a soft hiss, the legionary drew the serrated edge of his combat knife across his left wrist, cutting deep, watching with dead eyes as his gen-enhanced blood spattered across the cold deck plate. As soon as his Laraman cells staunched the wound, he repeated the process again, then again. The physical pain came and went like waves advancing and receding along the shoreline of a beach. The psychological pain was a constant ache in his heart, a tortured wound festering within the core of everything he was. Draskov did not know when he would stop attempting to bleed out his spirit. A part of him never wanted to stop.
Father.
The Night Lord's voice was a harsh, rattling rasp, the legacy of an old throat injury taken during the latter days of the Thramas Crusade. The Dark Angel who had dealt the blow had died screaming in the end, and the desiccated skin of his face was still stretched taut over Draskov's left pauldron. Yet such pleasant memories were now as ash upon the wind, when measured against the despair gripping his soul.
Why, Father? Why have you forsaken us?
You forsook us long ago, brother.
Snapping out of his half-trance, his mind had been languishing in for days. Draskov sprang to his feet with a curse, drawing his bolter and bringing it to bear in a single, lightning-swift motion.
I gave strict orders not to be disturbed. That includes you, Abreshai. Leave now. I am in no mood for companionship, least of all yours.
Abreshai's brittle smile split the shadows as he stalked into the chamber, leaving the trail of crimson footprints in his wake. Gore from a recent slaughter coated his midnight blue armor in a wet sheen, and the dormant teeth of his chain glaive wept a cascade of bloody tears as he advanced down the central aisle. Draskov noted with vague interest the other Night Lord was limping slightly, and that his features appeared more haggard than when he had last seen him without a helm.
You've been shut away in here for 8 nights, mutilating yourself like some feral world savage, and bewailing the death of our father, who never gave a damn about any of us,
Abreshai said with a sneer.
A rather excessive show of grief, I should think.
What? As opposed to engaging in wanton butchery purely for the sake of it?
Draskov spat, gesturing at Abreshai's soiled warplate.
At least I have the decency to keep my emotional turbulence to myself, instead of taking it out on the thralls.
Abreshai spread his arms wide.
What can I say? I found inflicting pain upon others lessens my own considerably. Perhaps you should give it a try, instead of sacrificing your flesh like one of Lorgar's deranged sycophants. It just might make you feel better. Wait. Perhaps you don't actually want to feel better. Perhaps you just want to keep on skulking in the shadows and wallowing in your misery. How pathetic. Is it any wonder Curse hated us? If he saw you now, he'd spit in your face and banish you from his presence without a second thought.
Draskov stepped forward several paces, Mag locking the bolter to his thigh plate and retrieving the spiked power mace he kept slung across his back at all times.
Get out,
he hissed, rage choking his words.
Get out now, or I will break every benighted bone in your body. My grief is my own, and I will express it however I please.
Unintimidated, Abreshai stood his ground, his grin grew wider, exposing his sharpened teeth, though it did not quite reach his eyes.
This isn't your personal sanctum of solitude, Drask. These trophies belong to the whole warband, to all our brothers. I have every right to come and go as often as I wish, though I doubt contemplating the victories of the past will be very edifying. What with you bleeding all over the place and crying out to Daddy like a lost little boy.
Draskov charged him, his secondary heart kicking to life, his limbs surging with energy, and hyperadrenaline flooded into his system. He did not activate the mace's disruptor field. He wanted to humble Abrishai, not kill him. Enough blood had already been shed within the warband in the weeks following their flight from Zagwelsa, and the chaos that had descended upon the Legion in the aftermath of Kurz's assassination. Vad Jahax, the Raptor Lord, now sat upon the Long Knife's command throne, his leadership upheld and enforced by his own loyal claw brethren. Though for how long, none could say. In a brotherhood as fractious and fratricidal as theirs, the threat of betrayal loomed large over the shoulder of every commander, no matter how renowned he might be. For his part, Draskov did not care who gave the orders, so long as he was left alone and not dragged into his brother's rivalries and petty power plays. He had always been a solitary creature, both before and after his ascension. Abrishai would pay in blood for disrupting his grieving. The screaming teeth of Abrishai's chainglaive met the adamantian head of Draskov's mace with a tortured shriek of strained components. A welter of sparks showered over the two legionaries. Shattered chain teeth scythed into the darkness as Draskov batted the glaive aside and drove a fist into his brother's angular jaw. Bone cracked. A sudden jolt of kill pleasure washed through Draskov as his murder lust rose to the fore. He gave Abrishai no respite. Pressing forwards, he hammered the other Night Lord with fist and mace in a punishing succession of blows that left little room for Abrishai to mount a counterattack. He began to give ground, and Draskov drove him mercilessly back towards the doors of the trophy hall.
Get out!
He snarled, flecks of spittle scattering from his lips.
Get out! Get out! Our Ginsire is dead, and I will mourn him as I see fit. Get out!
Abrishai abruptly dropped to one knee and deactivated the glaive.
I yield,
he said, bowing his head. Roaring, Draskov slammed the head of the mace into the Night Lord's breastplate, cracking and puncturing the bat-winged skull emblem emblazoned upon the gore-smeared ceramite, and sending him sprawling on his back upon the threshold. Something gave deep inside Abrishai's chest, and he coughed up blood. He did not attempt to rise. Draskov stood above him, fighting down the urge to keep on beating the legionary until he had been reduced to an unrecognizable mess of mashed meat and sundered armor. The combat euphoria triggered by the violence he had unleashed ebbed from him as swiftly as it had arisen, leaving his flesh cold and trembling. Willing his muscles to stillness, he glared down at his prone brother with open contempt.
You fight worse than a punch-drunk neophyte,
he said, each enunciation slathered in scorn.
Slaughtering helpless thralls for sport stripped you of your combat prowess in so short a time. For shame, brother. The Abrishai I knew of old would have never allowed himself to be defeated so easily, nor would he have yielded so readily. The Abrishai I knew would have put up far more of a fight.
He raised his heavy boot and planted it on the legionary's broken chest, grinding down. Abrishai shuddered, his face contorted in pain. Then he grinned again, and this time the smile was genuine.
Good. Good. That's better, brother,
he said.
Much better.
Draskov frowned, his eyes narrowing into slits.
Better?
Abrishai grimaced and coughed up more blood.
I
Do you have any idea what it's like seeing your own sergeant reduced to a wailing, flesh-cutting wreck, while the other claw leaders swagger about sneering and mocking him behind his back? Our brothers believed you have grown weak, Drask. By extension, they deem me weak also, seeing as I still serve as your second. We have always been creatures of murder and strife, cunning, savagery, and the will to power are the only things the sons of Nostromo will ever respect. Your flagrant displays of grief for our negligent bastard of a Primarch has diminished you in their sight. I defied your orders in hopes of seeing you cast off your sorrow and become the ruthless leader I once followed without hesitation into the fires of treachery and betrayal.
He gazed up at Draskov with something like gratitude.
You did not disappoint me. It is good to see you have returned to your former self, brother.
Draskov lifted his foot and stepped back. He had missed something vital, something upon which the whole confrontation with Abrishai hinged. He tilted back his head and opened his mouth, tasting the strike cruiser's poorly recycled air, his neuroglottis sifting through the menagerie of disparate blood scents clinging to Abrishai's armor. Beneath a thick surface layer of human blood, there lurked the more subtle scent of old transhuman vitae, congealed under his brother's damaged plate, intermixed with the fresh blood of their recent duel. Draskov drew in a sharp breath as realization dawned. Abrishai had already been wounded when he had entered the hall, and he knew no mortal thrall, no matter how frenzied or desperate, could have inflicted such strength-sapping injuries upon the legionary. Rage, as black as the sunless homeworld their legion had murdered, erupted within Draskov's hearts, blotting out the death of Curse from his mind. Abrishai was the sole remaining squad brother he had left. War against the Imperium and continuous infighting had taken the rest of their claw, one by one.
What did they do to you?
He hissed.
What did those craven whore sons do?
Abrishai pushed himself to his feet, leaning on the shaft of the chain glaive for support.
Nothing I won't be able to recover from in time. Though tangling with you certainly didn't improve things. It is of little concern.
Tell me,
Draskov commanded.
Now you're starting to throw your weight around again. Another good sign.
Tell me.
Abrishai wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his gauntlet and expelled a long, ragged breath.
There is not much to tell, in truth. Certain brothers insulted you, and I confronted them. They were unified. I stood alone. Still, I managed to bloody a few before they overpowered me. Once I had been subdued, they decided to teach me a lesson. And they took a long time to teach it. Their knives cut deep enough to do lasting damage. Pray you'll never see me out of my armor again. That is the price one pays for remaining loyal and attempting to defend the honor of a leader who is now perceived as a weakling.
The shadows enshrouding the trophy hall were torn asunder as Draskov kindled the disruptor field of his power mace. His eyes were akin to bottomless pits of black fire.
They will die for this insult against you and against our claw. They will all die.
Abrishai nodded. The two Night Lords clasped one another's wrists in a warrior's embrace, their animosity forgotten. Abrishai hesitated.
If few of them stand close to the throne of Vaja Hux, things could become complicated.
They shall die nonetheless.
Draskov strode from the trophy hall, weapons brandished, his grief gone, his face set, his path and purpose clear. Abrishai limped after him, a few paces behind, covering his claw leader's back, his blood-slick teeth bared in a nightmare snarl of triumph and anticipation as he followed his brother into treachery and betrayal once more.